Okay.
Alright, so, now we're live and recording. Hello.
Alright, I'm back. Let's lure this bitch.
Okay, good. Well, we're already recording, Felix, so you're...
God damn it. Is
Yeah.
this recording again?
No, oh. Okay. Well, that's a thing now. So hi Internet. We are the Casual Lorechat, from the Dream Slave Facebook group.
After 10 minutes to introduce ourselves.
Yeah, no. Who are we? Rotten Deadite? I don't think so.
Yeah, who's that guy? He's nobody.
No one likes that guy.
Welcome to this week's episode of Drinking with Andrew.
Yep, as is tradition. For those of you playing the home game, this evening we're drinking Elysian Salute the Sun. It's got a very, very aesthetic bottle there, I think. From Seattle, lots of hops and black lime. It's a little bitter for my taste, but you know, I'm enjoying it all the same. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll right into this. What topic do we want to start with? Noodle, you are first in the queue here. What do you want to discuss?
I suppose I'll launch into Cathnoquey. I can never figure out how to pronounce it.
Cathnoquey?
Yeah. Like the first of the Middle Island.
Yeah, and I gotta look that up because I know so very little. I know it's like Khajiit related, I think. Oh no, okay.
No.
It's it's a weird one.
It sounds okay. So that's somewhere over with the Neslia, probably. So according to UESP, Cathnoquey is a region of land that lies somewhere between Tamriel and Akavir. All that is known about this land is that it was conquered by Uriel Septim V in 3rd Era 276. So
Counter-argument.
However, if, as Matthew pointed out, I'll just let him go.
Oh, alright, yeah. So it looks like there's some stuff in PGE2. Oh, okay. So I'm just gonna bring this over to this side here. So towards a Dragon Sea, Cathnoquey. So we got this whole long thing here, and
There's fucking Chimer living there.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm gonna drop that just in the stream chat. So,
Needs.
yeah. So
I'm
I'm actually not familiar with this piece at all. I've never read it. I mean, I had heard the word Cathnoquey, but it's not something that I had ever.
Yeah, I've only ever really read the first pocket guides.
Yeah, the Anachronile. That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
The Wasabi Run. That's got some Nordic stuff going on there. Possibly.
Yeah, there's like descendants of Nordic people, and they live in peace with the Chimer.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like Matt knows a good deal about this. So why don't you give us the skinny, Matt? Take it away.
I'll type it in the chat because.
Okay. And then I can just pipe up with it, I guess. Spell it right? Yeah, I did. Okay.
That's an odd word.
Okay.
Sheds our electric system.
Let's see. Shit.
What about the fucking
Oh,
Anachronile's name? How the fuck do you pronounce that?
I mean, this is obviously something that's... I think it's anachronile. So, like an anachronism, but then we're just
It's
portmanteauing.
more the actual name of it. Fucking.
That... Lenococonnell. Lenococonnell? Something like that? I don't know what the fuck to do with umlauts, so... Because I'm American and we don't do funny things with our letters.
Lenococonnell.
Is that it?
But I don't know how to do accents or.
Yeah.
Lenococonnell. Or Lenococonnell.
We're just trying to say made up shit now, and it's wonderful.
It's probably Welsh in origin. That's why it's so fucked up.
Yeah.
Welsh doesn't have all of those accents.
Not to say that there's anything wrong with having accents. It's just as an American, I don't know what the fuck to do with them. And actually,
it's okay.
And it's also a palindrome. I'm noticing, yeah.
That's the whole point of it. Even.
Yeah,
It was originally called.
I'm ashamed that it took me that long. But yeah, that is a palindrome there. I don't know.
I can hear y'all again.
Hey Johnny, what's up, man?
Hey, Johnny.
So
What's happening?
So
what are we talking?
We're talking about Cathnoquey, which I am like my knowledge fields are woefully barren on the subject.
Cathnoquey?
Cathnoquey, yeah, it's an island out to the east of Tamriel. I imagine it's probably floating around somewhere relatively close to Ineslia or Roscrea, because I know those are two other islands that are out in that direction.
Well, they're supposed to be the same island chain, as far as I know.
Yeah, well, it says
I'm not sure about.
It says Lenaca-Canel, the Anacronal Island in the southernmost end of the Cathnoquey chain, formerly known as Lennox. It's Quay for south, but we mean west. And when it was independent state during the Second Empire. So south, but we mean west. Okay, so that's where that comes from. After the famous surrender of Akaviri forces at Pale Pass to Riemann Cyrodiil, Lennox was quickly annexed as imperial territory to help facilitate the capture of any Saessi military leaders seeking to evade their failed invasion by means of the north but really east sea straits. It's north but really east, and south but we mean west.
I think that's just northeast and southwest, to be entirely honest.
Well, I think it has more to do with the symbolism of time. I think the way the east is the future, and west is the past. So Yokuda and Akavir. Then the same applies in what is that? A 90-degree clockwise turn. So south and west are both the past, and
maybe
north and
it'd be
east.
like the
Also,
Ooh, go ahead.
Well, also just think about south, but we mean west, and north, but really east. Is also a reference to the idea of Atmora being frozen and Elmaris being boiling in time, and considering that the Chimer and the Nords, or the Niddies, or the Needs, however you pronounce them, are getting along together, they kind of had to have a compromising language to reconcile their different worldviews.
That could be interesting, and with the tying into time thing, maybe the Akaviri were trying to go north but really east to essentially speed up their eastern travel by traveling more north, if that makes sense. So they're less traveling across time but still traveling across time.
Yes. So I'm looking at what Matt's saying in the chat here. He says, so basically Cathnoquey is divided into two cultures which are extremely different, yet somehow coexist in perfect peace. Right now, to the point where the concept of warfare and fighting isn't something they even have. They are the Chimeri Quay and the Men of Keptu, which appear to respectively be descendants of ancient Chimer and Sira Nords. The Men of Keptu have a culture centered around bulls and minotaurs. We don't know much about the Chimeri Quay, but they appear to be similar to ancient Chimer, and they still hold Veloth in high regard. There's also a bunch of wasabi plantations there. And yeah, the men of Keptu lore got into ESO. Yeah, I remember. I don't remember any specifics. I do remember a costume that you could get. It's like a Daedric Keptu armor. That you can wear.
I know this.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, the Horns of the Reach, the big bad guy, Domi House.
Yeah.
Minotaur with flamed wings.
Mm-hmm. I love that guy.
He created the Dreadhorn clan and all that because the Reachmen he met had, I think it was an amulet, which was of Keptu origin.
Yeah. Okay.
And even more interestingly, this means they came from the Falkreath and bits of Hammerfell and Cyrodiil general area to fucking east of Morrowind somehow.
Interesting. See, I sort of love it, but I also hate it when there's like interesting lore in dungeon content, because I don't do a whole lot of dungeons, and the ones that have all the good stuff are hard to play. Like if I could just run through them and not fight anything, then I could focus on the lore.
You need some chameleon.
That's something like that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm in a dedicated clan just to let me do that without having to rush through everything.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm in a couple guilds that kind of do the same, like the Lore Seekers Guild. They do a lore stream as well. But I don't think they get really in depth to things.
Mine is Society of Scholars. They just have like story mode runs where you just go through at your own pace. I've yet to do one pissing them off with my addiction to architecture.
Well, architecture's awesome.
Yeah.
So Matt confirms, yeah, it was the Keptu amulet. Fun fact, when Uriel V got into Cathnoquey and saw the two tribes living in peace, his reaction to that wasn't, oh cool, that's great, but rather, what the fuck, this is all wrong.
It's actually it's even worse than that, because they didn't actually have to conquer the Cathnoquey, because as far as we can tell, both cultures are entirely based on hospitality.
Yeah.
So the legions landed, and the Cathnoquey started refilling their supplies. So Uriel 5 got pissed off and basically fucking genocided.
Yeah.
And then when the men of Keptu started drawing bulls, he sent them out to try and find bulls, which they didn't have.
Well, in my research on Minotaur lore, I completely missed all this stuff.
It was all fan art of Mori House.
Yeah.
That's the fighting diamond. What did you expect?
Damned peaceful barbarian.
Yeah.
How dare you be so uncivilized?
Here's Zero North being peaceful.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
It kind of reminds me, and I mean, everything is colored Stormlight for me right now, because I'm in like the last, I don't know, 200 pages of the second book of the Stormlight Archives. But it sounds.
I'm actually going to start reading that series eventually.
Oh, you should. I'm greatly enjoying it. The first half of the first book was a little slow, in my opinion, but everything past that has just been sublime. But in this book series, there's a kingdom of people, and they're in the middle of this. I mean, they're extremely warlike, and war is the greatest glory, whatever. They have kind of a Valhalla thing going on. And they have what's called the Vengeance Pact, because their king had been assassinated like 6 years ago, and so they're fighting with the people who ordered his assassination to take vengeance for the death of their king. And so I can imagine they go in looking for a fight, and the Parshendi, the enemy people, they're like, "Hey man, what's up? Let's here. Do you want some chowder? Come here. Like, come sit by my fire. Like, we'll hang out. We'll have a beer." I can just imagine that they would be so taken aback and feel so robbed of their vengeance that they would take. They'd take it anyway. Which it sounds kind of to me what Septim did in Cathnoquey.
And also with the Wasabi run, it came when he was, realizing maybe invading the future is a bad fucking idea. So there wasn't much reason for the legions to stay around.
Yeah.
But the Wasabi run, it just fucking showed up out of nowhere. An entire island of perfectly grown wasabi.
It sounds like paradise if you like Japanese food.
Yeah, so reading about the Wasabi run here. After the disaster at Ionith and the retreat of the Cyrodiil Navy back to Tamriel, there was little reason for the Empire to keep either resupply stations or legion garrisons in Cathnoquey. That changed with the discovery of the Wasabi Run, a trickle of shoals and small islets whose every available surface had been cultivated in swirling garden crops of a Tibrol-based wasabi. Wasabi is as lucrative a trade in Skyrim as skooma is to the hinterlands. No, you go away, Windows. No, shut up.
See, now I demand a Skyrim re-release where Nords just fucking love their wasabi.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
there's
wasabi mod.
Oh, is there?
there are pieces of lore that suggest that Nords ate wasabi on their shields because
Yeah.
berserk.
Yeah. Well. Not only that, but in the 7 fights of the Aldudaga, there's the sky whales, which spray powdered joy, which according to
cocaine.
Yeah, according to Kirkbride, was literally cocaine, and so to shake themselves out of the joy that they got from this powder, they had to eat wasabi to like shake it off, you know, in the immortal words of Taylor Swift.
See, no, instead of Taylor Swift, I was just imagining, you know, cocaine and everything. I was imagining, you know, celebrate good times, come on.
Okay, but how cool would Skyrim have been if we just got a whole bunch of sky whales?
See,
A lot cooler.
that would have been great.
Skyrim would have been way better if we had sky whales, and if we also had Nords just addicted to wasabi. They're like wiping it from their jaws while they're like, oh, damn skooma cats. They're ruining this country.
And then,
there's a rail of wasabi powder.
And they're
for the North.
I can just imagine. What's that?
Hear me out, guys. You know how in Elsewhere we have dragons as like moving world bosses?
Yeah.
Imagine if they do ESO Skyrim and instead of dragons it's sky whales.
I don't know, because I feel like the sky whales are seen as a positive thing rather than, I mean, you could hunt them, I guess. I mean, was that a thing that happened in the Aldudaga? Were they trying to hunt the sky whales?
They hunted them.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, they
well then yeah. Okay. Then yeah, I retract my statement. Yeah, you could totally just do sky whale hunts, and they were just really hard to kill. They don't really kill you, but they can use their joy powder to like get you to stop fighting.
So do they use levitation or do they flap their wings?
I imagine they swim through the air.
Yeah.
Just as they would, you know, in the ocean. I made a reference to sky whales. It's actually a recurring reference in all my slowed stuff. Their main mode of transportation is dead bloated whales that have been converted through necromancy, basically, into mass transit, and
that's cool.
Through their blowholes they spew like rotten acid flakes, and if you touch them they burn. So it's like I took the sky whales and I turned them around, made them the opposite.
So it's like a submarine?
No. So it hovers.
Okay.
It's basically like a gas bag kind of deal. But
imagine fucking the throat of the world if it was not only party snack home, but also just a sky whale graveyard. So rather than a blizzard, it's just a shit ton of joy snow, and it's covered in bones.
That could be cool. Oh, I gotta plug in my headset here.
Kind of like Sovngarde with the whale corpse.
Snow is just a nice big line of coke for Kinneret.
Yeah. That's it. So I want to read what Matt wrote here. This is from Isla de Power, the Eastern Fleet Futility by Commander Hungtat Torpal. I wonder if he's... Okay. Of the Imperial Battle College, present at both Roscrea and Cathnoquey, wounded en route to the ports of Ineslia and islanded there after its burning to heal. Returned to Cyrodiil after the disaster at Ineth, retired command at Anvil in 3rd Era 298. On the matter of Cathnoquey's famously swift conquest, it is my own opinion that we would have achieved all of it by the sundown of our first landing, foregoing 9 more of the crazed massacre. The Quay, both man and mer, surrendered their shelters, both fortified and at sea, without our demanding, and almost began to resupply our stock, all chemicals and weaponry, as if we had always been there. but they did so smiling, which the Imperator took almost reptilian umbrage at, and made order that we take nothing from the natives unless we did so by force, to let them know the Septim regime was never to give nod or knee to so vulgar and obvious a trickery. And then the note at the bottom says, I was delighted to hear that Commander Hungtat Torpal did indeed exist and was not another phantasm of the IGS, if only to find out that he had not retired at Anvil as per official record, but rather suffered court-martial for his publications by the Thonican Regency. Thonican Regency, I don't know what that is. And that he and all his foreline were sentenced to ancestral side in the bellows of Fickledire. Ancestral side. That sounds dope. That sounds like something Numidium related.
That sounds very Dunmer.
Isn't Numidium mentioned to have an ancestral scythe, I think it is?
Yeah, ancestral scythe is what that's called. And I always figured, so to differentiate that from like zero sum, because people just assume, oh, well, he deletes you, you zero sum. Which I mean, you still disappear either way, but it's not zero sum specifically, because zero sum is something you do to yourself. It's like being run over by your own car, whereas Numidium is piloting a different car. Or a terrible analogy. But I
was about to say, what the fuck?
I always kind of took it that Ancestral Scythe erased all history of an entity along with that entity. So it's like, okay, here's Jim. Jim gets Ancestor Scythe. He and all of his progenitors have now been deleted. No one has ever heard of Jim. Jim who? I don't know who you're talking about. There's nobody named Jim.
It just burns away your
yeah, that's kind of how I've always interpreted it. I mean, I've been told that that's not the way it is, but fuck that, I like it. Matt says his interpretation for that bit I read there is that this guy was a heretic against the Septim Empire, and he only became a loyal noble soldier after the Ancestral Side erased his original story. Yeah, bloodline extermination, wiping out the family. Yeah, time-altering magic execution is cooler. I absolutely agree. I mean, that's something that the Empire would have access to. I mean, if anything's left over from the Riemann Dynasty, because the Riemann Dynasty was crazy high magic setting.
Yeah, the Elder Council has some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Look at
They had fucking time police.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at the Anacryl.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're just going to turn this fucking isle into a dream sleeve.
Time prison. Is that what I didn't read the whole thing.
They also zero sum.
It's more like a dream sleeve server.
Well, I wish I had the time to just like sit here and read this, but that'd be a lot of dead air. So I'm gonna not.
Second edition PGE is amazing.
Yeah. Well, when most of the second edition PGE is fan written.
Yeah, but it was like hand selected.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I'm not using that to discredit it at all. I'm just not terribly familiar with it. Is the thing
There's also the High Rock. There's also the High Rock, which was never added.
Yeah, is that where we get the stuff from? There's actually there's a Google Doc I shared earlier today. It was High Rock is awesome, or High Rock is cool, whatever it was. Well, I probably still got it up. Yeah, High Rock is cool. Yeah, and so it has all these links and all this art about why High Rock is actually very interesting, and it's not generic, as is often portrayed in the games. And I will actually share that in chat here, just so you guys can see it, because I'm a fan of sharing.
There's also another couple of interesting bits from the PGE too.
Yeah.
Those regions largely unwritten, which is the Republic of Hard, which as I understand is a Dreg Republic, and Tatterdemalion.
Yes,
which is where you get the pointing.
Well, Tatterdemalion is essentially a moon colony on Masser.
Yeah.
As I understand, it's
Secunda.
It's on Secunda. Okay. I mean, it had to be one of the two, right? I mean, there's been a mod that's been in the works for a long time. Production stopped on it, and I think it's picked up again. I'm pretty sure I'm in the Discord for that. Yeah, I am. There. Yeah, a lot of stuff hasn't been. Let's see. When's the last comment? Okay, that was July 9th. Was the last time stuff was going on in there. So I don't know how steady it's going. I mean, they've got a website and everything.
I mean, that's pretty recent compared to when I last checked it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that concerns me is there's not any actual discussion about the project.
Yeah.
Since like early July. I mean, we're towards the back end of August now, and
yeah,
I mean, that's almost 2 months of just no activity. So how do we know that things are continuing? I mean, it could have just stopped work, or progress, whatever. It's fucking hot in here. Okay, so I don't know if that kind of, I mean, that was, I feel like that was kind of a crash course on Cathnoquey. Stuff. Yeah, and I'm certainly gonna have to do a little bit of reading myself, especially if there's minotaurs involved. Because I mean, I've done a terrible job keeping it quiet, but I'm writing a minotaur coda, and so anything minotaur related is something that I need to look into, because I try to take everything I can and then maybe reference something here and there, and just to show that I'm paying attention.
You could reference minotaur stuff aside from their connection to the Keptu, unfortunately, and drawing balls on everything.
Yeah, I mean,
you could make a reference to when the original minotaur guy was hanging out with Pelennor, and they're about to do battle, and then
I mean, that's more house
because he wants to battle so.
I mean, I don't know that I'll be that sophomoric, at least not openly. I will hide it under metaphor and turn a phrase. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the best kind of deep lore. It's where it's like he stabs him with a spear. Oh no, he's giving him fellatio.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of something. Really? That's kind of something that I did with Sloda. The Coral Tower is actually Thross's giant throbbing hate boner, so that's kind of
very Kirkbride.
I think of it. There's a lot of phallic imagery in the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah,
like the towers.
Yeah, well, that's why that's why Kirkbride says.
Somebody say Muatra?
yeah. Guess what this represents.
Hey, guess what the Earth bones represent?
Hey.
Triangular gate.
Well, the triangle.
What do you think that means?
Oh, vagina. Maybe I don't know. I mean, we all know that the Amulet of Kings is supposed to be alluding to Alessia's period vagina. That was something.
This is all new to me.
Yeah, that was something I gathered from MK, I think, in a just an offhand comment he made. But he said at one point, if it looks like a penis, it's probably a penis. you should just accept that it's a penis. Because we're human beings and we've been drawing dicks on things since forever. Okay, so I'm gonna scoot us along here. So Oddman, it's your turn. What do you want to talk about? Anything's for you.
I'm gonna put something more in my wheelhouse because I'm very casual outside of my very specific rule set.
Okay.
The living Trinimac, and whether or not Gortwog's church was actually real.
Okay.
I know that we don't have much actual lore on the living Trinimac beyond it existed.
Mm-hmm.
Living Trinimac? What do you mean?
Okay, so to give our little rundown. So, Gortwog Gronagram, king of the Third Orsinium, creates a church that says, Trinimac is alive, Malakath has been deceiving us the entire time.
Yeah, that's basically what a lot of the Altmer believe. They believe Trinimac is fine.
No. And that's also a point of major contention in the Orsinium DLC for ESO. That's you've got orcs who are reverting back to Trinimac worship, and then those who stay with Malakath, and it's largely those who are in the city tend to favor Trinimac. Those who are out in the country tend to prefer Malakath. So it's almost this rural versus urban kind of deal, like it kind of echoes the Industrial Revolution a little bit to my eye.
I mean, orcs are always going to be tied to industrialism. Ever since Tolkien was like, hey, so I'm going to steal this culture and plop it into my story.
Yeah, totally. What were you going to say, Matt?
While Matt's typing.
Okay.
Also, that also ties in with just Malakath being the god of pariahs, because the pariahs in the pariah society are the ones following it, obviously.
Yeah. Your culture looks neat. It would be a shame if I replaced it with mine.
That's what happened in Skyrim.
Yeah.
Again, there's actually like an old man you can meet who lives in like a hut near the woods in Skyrim. Disgusted that its city folk are worshipping the imperial divines.
Oh, okay. So this is just kind of echoing that same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't recall if I've ever encountered the NPC. I haven't seriously played Skyrim in probably 2 or 3 years.
He wants you to go hunt down the favored beast of kind, if I remember the quest correctly.
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I may be thinking about the Blood Moon quest where you're supposed to hunt down like the holy bear or whatever.
And I can remember the quest, I just can't remember the guy.
Yeah. Okay, so we're basically trying to figure out if Gortwog's church existed? Is that...
Well, more or less... Okay, so... We know that Trinimac existed in the Merithic era, and then was turned into Malakath by most accounts by the end of the Velothi Exodus. The big question is Trinimac still kicking around and not changed into Malakath, and is Malakath a different being?
No.
Is that what the living Trinimac church posits?
Gotcha. Because I know there is a related theory, related because it's related to Trinimac, that when Malakath was born, that Trinimac was split into 3 other pieces. And that those pieces are Arkay, Zenithar, and Stendarr. And Merlin, who, at least on the Tesla subreddit, he's always been kind of the orc guy. He told me firsthand. He said, "No, I hate that theory." And that was about what I got out of it. But it is an interesting kind of thing because we've got several instances where Etata kind of shatter into different entities. So, I mean, if we choose to look at it that way, at least. I don't think there are any actual confirmed cases. But, what's that?
I can sort of accept that theory with the exception of Zenithar, simply because we do sort of already have an origin for his belief, and he comes from fucking Akavir and Argonia somehow. Yeah. Supposedly.
Well, something Matt's pointing out here is that Trinimac, tri being a Latin prefix, what's the word, prefix for three or triple, and then Nimic, Trinimac, Trinimic. So personally, Sun, Orke, and Stun. So we got the two, the Nordic pantheon, the Trinimac theory makes sense. Yeah, so that's really where it anchors there. I was kind of jumping some hurdles by going straight into Zenithar, Stendarr, and Arche. But Sun is Zenithar, Orke, Orki is Arche, and Stun is Stendarr. I think one time I tried making a connection between Stun and Sothasil, but I think that was just me reaching, honestly. Had to do with Stun being represented by.
You know that, Oddman?
What's that?
Yeah, I've heard of the Trinimic theory before.
No, that Sun is the Nordic version of Trinimac.
Yeah, I knew that. The one that I personally posit is the dualist theory, that where they're both one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
So what you're saying is that Trinimac and Malakath are effectively mirror brothers, and that they're two sides of the same coin, just like Akatosh and Lorkhan, or in my opinion, Sheogorath and Jiggalag.
So yeah, the idea is that Trinimac is Malakath, Malakath is Trinimac. Neither of the two can exist without the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, I don't know. I mean, that's just as valid as anything else, I'd say. I mean, there's definitely some merit to it. A thought I had just now: can ideology as skin apply to Atata? Because if say Trinimac and Boethia had a fight and Trinimac lost, how would his ideology change in such a way so as to turn him into Malakath instead? I mean, this...
I'd argue, if anything, it applies more to Atata.
Yeah? You think so?
Like,
okay.
With Sheogorath to Jiggalag and vice versa.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah.
Well, the thing I posit is that Boethia's, Melifala's eating of him was more sort of eating of his pride.
Yeah.
Not a physical thing. And that pride turned into rage, and that rage turned into Malakath.
So
basically he's Malakath because of shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
this kind of relates to him being Cathnoquey, ostracized and all that.
Yeah. Because what I'm gathering from that is, like, say you play some competitive game and you go up against someone who vastly outclasses you, and you could say they ate you up and shat you out. Like that's something that someone might say when you've been beaten so handily.
Every day when I play Soul Calibur 6 and I get my ass kicked.
And
I rage quit. I become.
But then it gets even better, because in this situation, it's not like Trinimac is some new going up against champion. Trinimac is like the esports champion of the entire game. And Boethia and Mephala are basically hackers.
Well, I mean, and the thing with Mephala, at least, because Mephala, to my knowledge, has a very minimal role in all this. I think, doesn't she just distract Trinimac? She basically stabs him in the leg or something, and then Boethia does the rest. Yeah,
it's essentially Mephala does a little bit, and Boethia just is like, "Oh, hi, eat."
Yeah. There's something I know that Felix wrote regarding this subject.
Here we go.
And Felix, why don't you tell us about that? While you do that, I'm gonna go turn on the air conditioning because I'm fucking hot.
I kind of don't want to, because I'm not even completely convinced of my own theory.
Oh, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm not completely convinced of the theory that Anu the Dreamer is a transgendered woman trying to accept herself.
This is true.
But I mean, it's still a fun.
It's still a fun theory.
Yeah, it's a fun. It makes a certain degree of sense. Yo, what's up, Matt?
So Okay, so basically, I'm assuming at some point it'll be published, but I wrote this article, which is the case for Trinimac being Tall Papa. A lot of what Tall Papa does in the Redguard version of the monomyth, so it's called the World Skin, more closely mirrors the actions of Trinimac than it does, Akatosh. And relating to Trinimac in general, MK did say to study, and I'm still not sure if he meant Roman Mithras or the Hindu-Iranian Mithra, which, while inspired by the same kind of being, are both very different gods in terms of what they represent and how they're presented.
To which I respond, ¿Por qué no los dos?
Because it's the same way that, Anu is not Anu, is not Alkosh, is not Akatosh, right?
Yeah.
Papa doesn't have a single equivalent.
There's not a one-for-one.
Yeah. I mean, I have this whole idea with gradients, and especially how Atata work across cultural lines, that you've got, so not only do you have the up and down subgradient with Anu the godhead at the top, and then Anu and Padme, and then Anuiel and Sithis, and then Lorcan and Akatosh, and then the divines are all all the Atata are on that level, and then you get down that way. You've also got a sideways gradients, and I kind of think like a clock face sort of deal, and so you've got within the Atata sort of chunk of the up and down subgradients, you've got this kind of clock face. And maybe at integral points, so like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, you've got very very central figures that are present in all the cultures. And then as you go around, you kind of get little Venn diagrams of different versions of different Atata. And sometimes like take who's it, Tawaka, I think, who's thought to be RK, and I mean it doesn't have to be a one-to-one. It's just the overlap of RK and say Stendar or something. Like I don't know what the actual other entity was. I mean, I've seen plenty of arguments over it, but I didn't pay attention to the result. And so when you've got something like Shior is a good example. You've got Shor, you've got Sheogorath. Well, the overlap there would be Shior. And so it's got elements of both. It is its own distinct entity because it's not Shor, it's not Sheogorath. It's its own kind of guy, right? He just has bits and pieces of the other two. And so, I mean, people like to look at the cultural deities and go, okay, so we've got Kine, that's obviously a one-to-one to Kinnereth, which... fair. But then we've got Orki. Okay, so he's seen as kind of an enemy. He's got a lot of RK symbolism, but he's also got a lot to do with Malakath. So is he an overlap of both? Well, which one is he? And so people will argue, oh, well, no, he's obviously RK. But no, he's actually Malakath. Well, which is it? And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. And that's something I think...
yeah.
I think that's something a lot of people miss. And so I see it as like a sideways gradient sort of thing on top of the up and down gradients. That's the point I'm trying to get across. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think that's very valid of an argument to make, because with not just, if you look at it in more of an historical context, kind of Kinnereth, because the Imperials took over Skyrim and was like, hey, we need to start adopting cultures or they'll revolt. And then you look at it at a metaphysical level, that they both serve the same purpose.
Yeah. And I mean, people will often say that, oh, well, these different cultural representations of certain deities, they are the same deity. So like Sheogorath and Sheogorath in the Khajiit culture, which, yeah, and ESO says that they are the same. Personally, I'm not convinced, because again, if we're looking at these kind of sideways subgradients, then, I mean, we've got different entities that are kind of, they're their own, I guess, personality, their own person within the confines of a larger whole. So imagine a 12-sided die, which I've got one here. Imagine a 12-sided die, and you know, you've got 12 different faces on there. Let's say you've got 12 different cultures that all see different versions of the same entity. And this is the best analogy I've ever been able to figure out. That D12 is shitty. Let's not use that one. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna use D10 because that's what I have. So, you know, the D10 is gonna have numbers from 1 to 10, right? Each one of those is its own distinct number, but it's part of the die. But then you've got other dice, other shapes that are split up in different ways. Say a D4, for example. That also has a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4 on it, which the D10 also has. So those would be the overlaps between the two larger entities. I mean, that's, yeah, kind of like aspects, I suppose. I mean, they are separate, but they're connected to the whole. So if we're viewing things from the Khajiit sense, well, then hey, we've got Cathnoquey. That's, say, number 3 on our 10-sided die. But that 3 also exists, you know, on a D4. So we've got Kinnereth, Cathnoquey, Kine, and you know, something. I don't know. I mean, it kind of falls apart the more I think about it. But I mean, that's always kind of how I've considered it, because it's really hard to put it in a physical, you know, confined box. I mean, we get into some weird nuance and some really strange abstract kind of stuff that's really hard to put into words. But that's the best I can think of.
Like Talos is 3 people.
Yeah, see, and that I feel like is kind of a different situation. Because that's 3 different people becoming one, rather than one entity becoming however many different entities as cultures demand. You see what I'm saying? And I mean, and this is where mythopoetics comes in, mythopoeia. Because as one culture goes, oh, we have our own version of Kinnereth, and she is Tava, then because so many people believe in Tava, well, and it fills a lot of the same role that Kinnereth does, then part of Kinnereth will kind of be not shaved away necessarily, but like molded to fit that. So we've got Tava, who's its own entity. It has its own thoughts and feelings separate from what Cathnoquey might feel, but they're still connected because they are different aspects of the same entity. And I mean, it's maybe it's a little overly complicated, and I feel like ESO kind of missed an opportunity to play with that with Sheogorath and elsewhere.
Personally,
yeah,
I have a similar sort of idea, but only applying to mostly just the Aedra and Elnothay and all that, but also to certain Daedra, like, say, Malakas is obviously the big one. Discussion. The ones that are, despite being Daedra, intrinsically tied to mortals and mundane.
Sure, yeah, and
work backwards from Mythopoeia, or however the hell you...
Yeah.
I mean, another argument could be made for Jigalak, Sheogorath, and the aspects of those two, because the gray keeps marching on, even with Jig dead or alive or wherever.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked at length about my opinions of Sheogorath and Jigalak, and that's not something I want to rehash for the 80th time. But I mean, I'm usually the first person to say that there is no real distinction between Aedra and Daedra. And the only distinction is the choice that they made and what happened because of that choice, being whether to contribute to Mundus or not.
Yeah, no, that's what my idea works backwards from. They're not tied, with the exception they're not tied to Mundus, so they're not tied to
yeah.
So they're not.
And there was kind of a thought experiment I was playing with for a little while, and I might return to it. I don't know. Where basically, if things had been flipped, and we've got the Daedric princes are now in the roles of the 9 divines. So instead, we have the 16 divines, right? And everyone worships them, and they're great and whatever. But then, what happens to the Aedra? How do they exhibit themselves in the Arbus while they are no longer bound and comatose and so I have this idea that they would be just as capricious, just as self-serving, just as nasty as the Daedra can be.
Absolutely.
Because
so they could express themselves as a sort of, hey, we're your ancestor spirits, so act like us kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, one of the main bits of information that led me to this kind of idea is there's a quest, I think during the Knights of the Nine, if I recall. There's a guy who, according to the lore, there was a guy who struck a beggar. He smacked this beggar, and Stendarr cursed his family. They had control of, I think, or that they had possession of the gauntlets of the Crusader, and Stendarr made it so that no one in his family, I don't remember exactly what the details of the curse were, but it had to do with these gloves, and no one could pick them up. It was sword in the stone kind of deal. And his entire family was doomed to have a short life or some shit. I don't remember what the details were again. But for hitting one guy, Stendarr cursed the entire family. That sounds an awful lot like something Azura would do. Considering 3 of the Chimer betrayed the pact that Nerevar and Azura had, so Azura basically turns all the Chimer into Dwemer. Well, Miss Arethi or whatever down the lane, she had nothing to do with that. Why is she being punished? You know what I mean? And so Stendarr exhibits just the same kind of capriciousness, but because the Aedra are bound to Mundus, they're comatose, they don't have the agency, they simply cannot do things that we consider to be bad. And so we see them as good.
I kind of don't want...
They gave themselves.
What's that?
I kind of don't want Akatosh to have agency. Ever.
Yeah, I mean...
mad.
Well,
we talk about Sheogorath being the god of madness, but Akatosh kind of...
I think this was something I put on my White Guar page on Facebook. Let me see if I can find it.
I gotta go sleep before work, but
okay.
Have a good time, y'all.
Yeah, have a good night. Isn't I mean, maybe Alduin could be a form of agency for Akatosh, and I think that kind of gets into kind of what I was saying, right? Alduin is, to my estimation, kind of the Nordic view of Akatosh based on how the Nords view time.
Okay.
And so I know there's that one book. It's like, oh yeah, Alduin is not Akatosh. Never has been. It's stupid. But and I know that Alduin says, oh, I'm the firstborn of Akatosh. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like he's a cultural equivalent, and the Nords don't like the fact that their lives are going to end, and they're going to be sent to the Howling Abyss in some manner. Life is temporary, so the end of time is a bad thing. even though, I mean, the main distinction between man and mer is that life is fleeting, let's enjoy it, versus reality is a prison, everything sucks.
Even then, you can still sort of see it, because, like, the Nordic heaven, obviously, is... You get there by basically just enjoying life.
Yeah.
Have glorious fight. Have massive drinking.
Yeah. Oh, so here's the thing I wrote up. I came up with, basically, if the 9 divines, or I guess 8, not including Talos here, if they were Daedric princes, what would they be? So Julianos is the prince of calculations. He's obsessive and disregards the whimpers of the subjects upon which his divine experiments are turned. Dibella is the prince of temptations, who is possessive of her worshippers, showing the ugly mess that love can be. Mara is the prince of wombs. She is controlling and suffers no fools among her children, smothering them in her wolf's jaws. Zenithar is the prince of sweat. He favors those who put their work before themselves, ignoring the blisters and aches of toil. Kinnereth is the prince of storms, whose howling screams and furious blows capsize ships and scorch crops. Stendar, the prince of punishment, who destroys outright those who harm a hare on one of his flock, like with that beggar. Arche, the prince of death, whose prison shackles mortals to a circuit of anguish and sorrow. And Akatosh, the prince of inevitability, whose dread glare causes all to fall old, decrepit, and weak. I think there are a couple others I had in here. Someone.
Hang on the subject of Akatosh, and we were talking earlier about how he has agency. I would say Akatosh also has agency through the Dragonborns. They're kind of like his answer to the Shezzer.
Yeah, I don't know that I see them as equivalent.
I think Akatosh has a lot of agency.
I think he tries to have agency. I'll say I see what you wrote here, Matt. Dragons were made to dominate. Why would that be? Aren't they pieces of Akatosh, so are their nature not similar to his? I'd argue that Akatosh is the most dominating force in the Arbus. I mean, Tide in Time. What's that Chaucer quote? I don't remember. Time
is always the winner. I don't know.
I gotta look it up because it's on a journal I've got in my room. Tide and Time. Oh yeah, the tide and the time wait for no man. That's Geoffrey Chaucer. Everyone's controlled by time. Adamantia and the laws of convention, that's his stuff. It's Akka's law enforced by Akka's will. Alduin and Akatosh, Jigalag and Sheogorath, Barbas and Clavicus Vile, Malakath and Trinimac. Oh, for Barbas and Clavicus Vile and Jigalag and Sheogorath, I take issue with that one. And since we've kind of traveled away from Trinimac, hold on, I'm gonna. What's our timestamp? We're at 58 minutes. Okay, so Barbas versus Haskell. I mean, I guess
I can see it.
I mean, the way I've always seen Barbas.
These pieces, the prince, but not then exactly.
Well, I always saw Barbas as the part of the duality that Clavicus Vile holds, and there's a piece I've slowly been working on where I look at all the duality in the Elder Scrolls to show how it's such a driving force. And one of these is in the Daedric Princes. So, for example, Molag Bal, he is the quintessential slave driver. He dominates everyone. You put him in a room with someone, he will find a way to dominate them. But because of that, he doesn't have a choice. He's going to do it because that's his nature. He is a slave to his nature. Ergo, he is the quintessential slave driver and the quintessential slave simultaneously. One begets the other.
On the note of Clavicus Vile,
yeah,
I've taken it sort of as he's not entirely him. Like, unlike the other princes, because of his very nature of bargaining and all of that, obviously it's easier for subgradients, essentially, of him to form and crystallize, like Barbas, Umbra, all of that.
Okay.
I think, actually, Barbas and Umbra are the only one we know, but, like, that's quite a bit more than we have for every other Daedric prince, so...
Yeah. Well, I've always seen Barbas as... So Clavicus Vile is the Prince of Bargains. He needs to negotiate with someone. He needs to... Because he is the merchant that he needs to always be getting the better of someone. And when there's really no one around, or everyone's kind of figured your shit out and so they don't deal with you, what do? Well, I guess you have to start doing it with yourself. And so... Clavicus Vile kind of chops off a part of his consciousness and goes, haha, you now get the short straw so that I can win. I created you so that you could lose. And you could be subservient to me. Because that's I have to do that. Right? So he is by that virtue, he is getting the best of the deal and the worst of the deal.
Oh, now I'm sad for Barbas.
That could even tie in with Umbra, because obviously eventually Umbra just literally takes an entire portion of Clavicus Vile's realm. He made another piece of himself to bargain with and bargain using.
Yeah.
And eventually that piece won a bargain.
Yeah.
And thus we get the Umbriel Christ.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. Now with Haskill, because Matt mentioned Haskill there, I don't see that necessarily as a division. That's not mitosis happening there. That's I think Sheogorath eating someone else, effectively. And I can't help but think about the Shakespearean play Hamlet. And this was something that I had this big conversation once in a Shakespeare class I took. And we were talking about how, in the play Hamlet, madness seems to move from Hamlet to Ophelia. And Ophelia starts going mad, too. And so it's this communicable disease sort of deal. And so when we think of how Haskill, he allegedly... I think it's pretty probable, he allegedly ended a Grey March himself. And he mantled Sheogorath, he became the Mad God. And yet he's still there. So, how I see that is, he ended the Grey March, or rather moved the cycle of the Grey March along into its next step. And Sheogorath effectively consumed him. And now he is part of Sheogorath's many, many identities. Many personalities. So, Haskill is in there somewhere. He's himself, but he's also part of Sheogorath. And that's
in a way you could say that.
I've got the iron out. Do you have anything you need iron?
Yeah, Felix. You need anything ironed?
If you go with, if you go not with the Grey March failing, but only for it failing for him, maybe he failed the actual mantling component. So rather than walking like Sheogorath until Sheogorath walks like him, he just walked like Sheogorath to ad infinitum without ever having Sheogorath walk like him. So he is wholly Sheogorath, but Sheogorath isn't Haskill. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because then it becomes
relies on them being separable and all that, which I know you take issue with.
Yeah, and I mean it's really I mean, I guess I'm getting into Jiggalag and Sheogorath. The idea that Jiggalag and Sheogorath can be separated is unusual to me. And people will cite, oh, well, Malakath, and oh, we get, Meridia, and she was added to the Daedric pantheon. But with this, I mean, this is like trying to separate Anu and Padme. This is like trying to separate Akatosh and Lorkhan. You need space and time, just like chaos and order, or madness and order, I guess, are two things that they coexist. You can't have one without the other. I mean, things can be so chaotic, constantly maddening, that they, in a sense, become an order in the fact that they're constantly mad. See how that it kind of circles back on itself?
I'm going to leave now. I don't have much time.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Bye. Yep. You're welcome.
So, while they may be two distinct princes, I think they are the same prince.
I'm gonna take a quick shower. Do you need a bathroom?
And so,
I'm actually going to dig up my source for, like, I mentioned on the server a little while ago.
Yeah.
A common quote. I'm going to find that now. It might take time.
Well, while you're doing that, I mean, it seems to me that Sheogorath would have multiple personalities, or maybe it's Jiggalag that has the multiple personalities, and Sheogorath became the dominant one. I mean,
good old interpretation.
If you've ever seen the movie Split with James McAvoy, we've got you've got all these different personalities. You've got the kid. I don't remember what the kid's name is, but he's like perpetually 9. There's a woman in there. There's one dude who's an artist, and then there's the Beast, and he's like this super strong, crazily powerful personality that he has. And so these other personalities have built up a cult around him. Well, if it started with Jiggalag, and as is suggested in The Truth in Sequence, he understood himself and so went mad in the knowing. He understood that as an agent of chaos, how can he bring order? And it drove him insane. His personality shattered, and now we've got Sheogorath. It's not that the other princes basically, like, took him and stuffed him in a cage that's Sheogorath shaped. It's that he saw them as an example of the chaos. He, as one of them, should also be providing chaos, but he's the Prince of Order. How can I do that and be part of this? And so the facade cracks. He splinters. Well, now we've got Jiggalag and Sheogorath. Sheogorath takes over. He has gone certifiably insane. And so we get the Prince of Madness. And the Prince of Madness, oh, well, he's lonely. And so he wants to gather other personalities to kind of cram into Jiggalag's head. And so you've got Haskell. You've got the champion Cyrodiil, perhaps. You've got all the dukes and everything that ends up in the Shivering Isles could potentially be a part of Sheogorath and his multiple personalities, because he is quintessential madness.
Right. Although also on the subject of Sheogorath, I believe it's mentioned somewhere that was born from the Sithis-shaped hole in Lorkhan's chest after its heart had been ripped out.
Yeah, and yeah, the bird.
Which then just kind of makes you wonder. Okay, so then where does Jiggalag fit into that creation story?
See, I think perhaps that Jiggalag, well, I think Jiggalag already existed, and somehow at convention, that is where he went mad, and that is where Sheogorath kind of popped into existence. Maybe it was the realization of the hole in Lorkhan's chest, or the heart which went cackling over into Resdain.
Wait, hang on. Headcanon time.
I like where you're going.
Well, maybe. I haven't spoken yet. Okay, so Jiggalag is the prince of... And... Trinimac's whole thing, even though he's not a Daedric prince, but his whole thing was truth and loyalty. So what if Jiggalag and Trinimac were kind of like spiritual brothers or something? Jiggalag saw what they did to Lorechat and realized the chaos it would bring. That is also when he kind of Sheogorath emerging from the Sithis-shaped hole on his chest. That's what I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, but oh my god.
I
So
do
dry
like
from
that,
today,
though.
my god. Oh.
Like, or it even could just be that because time is non-linear in, well, not in, just outside of Mundus, because Akatosh only applies in Mundus.
Yep.
Jiggalag learned and experiences maybe sort of twin Jiggalag and Trinimac were Lorcan and Akatosh, but not such literal opposites.
Yeah.
And so, because time is non-linear outside of Mundus, when both Lorcan, Trinimac ripped out Lorcan's heart, and Boeotia Malakath Trinimac, as a result, both happened at once to Jiggalag, turning him into a perversion of himself, just like Malakath is of Trinimac.
Yeah.
Shaped after the hole in Trinimac.
Yeah. Well, there's also a quote by Fa Nuaten where he talks about how, oh, well, I keep to my sphere because I don't want to end up like you-know-who. Which most of us think is a reference to Jiggalag. So how was it that he was trying to reach outside his sphere? I mean, if his sphere is order, was he trying to incite chaos?
To be fair, though, it could be Jiggalag or it could also be Trinimac.
Or it could even be both at the same time.
It could.
Possibly.
Cause, actually, that's where the going mad and knowing could tie in. Because both just obviously get fucked up, either through Boeotia or realizing that they're an orderly, chaotic entity, and because of their connection and one being... And basically that's how they both completely changed. It wasn't just one being influenced. They both had to deal with going mad in the knowing and being eaten by Boeotia. Amplifying the effect on both. I
Do we know Boeotia ate more than one person?
It's not that it ate more than one person, that's like the effect copied over to Jiggalag. Essentially. This is all just wild mass guessing, but
well, I mean that's
the essence of Tesla.
That's what we do here. I mean, we aren't looking for answers necessarily. We're just trying to figure out, hey, what's possible? What could the answer be?
We're working for more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean that's where it's fun. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely stuff to think about. I like the idea that we're kind of pitting Jiggalag and Trinimac kind of as equal entities. Because I mean, how would that work? I mean, because Trinimac isn't.
Brother Jiggalag.
As Jiggalag or Trinimac isn't necessarily chaotic. I'm trying to figure out where their oppositeness would come from. Because I mean, Trinimac's whole thing is he's a warrior deity.
Yeah, that's where I'm hanging up too, because like they tie in, but they don't tie in as opposites. I was just using Lorcan and
I got something.
Being tied. Oh, go ahead.
So, the way of the sword and the way of the mind.
Oh.
So we've got Trinimac, who he's all about the martial prowess. He's all about the duels and the swordsmanship and you know, everything that's combat. Whereas Jiggalag isn't interested in that. He just wants to catalog. He wants to make sure everything's in its proper place. He wants to make sure, okay, so how many apples are there in Tamriel? Well, we've got this many and this many and this many. Okay, cool. Moving on. He's all about the cerebralness of reality rather than the violence of reality.
Oh, actually, you can even tie that in more, because combat is obviously inherently chaotic. You don't know what your opponent is going to do.
Yeah, whereas
Jiglag's whole deal is determinate. He has his library. He knows where everything will be.
Yeah.
Trinimac has to prepare for everything that cannot be predicted.
Ooh. I like that. See, and the thing is, the farther down the subgradients we go, the less obvious these things become. I mean, we got some metata that are pretty straightforward. Okay, well, Mara, Morwa, you know, whatever iterations of Mara you've got. I mean, their motherhood. I mean, symbolized by a wolf and, you know, okay, motherhood. That's pretty straightforward. That's something that human beings in real life have been worshipping for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, we've got the was it the Venus of, it's not Dusseldorf. I gotta figure this out. The Venus of Willendorf. That's what it is. Venus of Willendorf. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. This is one of the most famous archaeological finds in history. I'm just gonna copy the image. I'm gonna drop it right there. And so the whole thing is, you know, it's suggestive of you know, feminine beauty and motherhood and that kind of thing. I mean, you can see how the curves and the breasts and the thighs are very, very stylized, and so you know, I mean, things like that, like Debella, Mara, whatever, they're very, very easy to put together. But then when you get into how things are opposite, that's kind of where it gets a little more interesting, because it's all in the interpretation, isn't it?
I wonder what Odd would think of this, given we've gone so far with his topic after he left.
Yeah. What? Why'd he leave? I'm gonna throw a brick at that guy. Not really. I don't want to.
Chill.
I'll throw a brick to it.
Yeah.
To him.
Yeah. See, I mean, a thing you'll learn about me is I like to bring in human history into things, especially like, you know, archaeology. Example.
Yeah.
Because I think those things are fun.
Get along really well with Adam.
Which?
Kerbal.
Oh, Kerbal. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I've known about Kerbal for a long time. I mean, he was doing those those AMAs, those in-character AMAs, which I thought were pretty cool. Other people were starting to emulate them, and they just weren't doing as good a job, and so then we had to be like, okay, well, how many of these do we allow?
Yeah.
But
that was a wonderful thing to watch from his server.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. I tried to slap the role playing kind of the tag, the flare on it whenever I saw one, but yeah, so far Kerbal seems like a cool guy. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? We haven't had Lexicon in here. I know Lexicon's listening. You got a topic you want to talk about? We're at 1 hour and 18 minutes. I think we got one more topic in us, and then we can call it a night. Lexicon! Hello! You got a topic you want to discuss?
Have you guys heard of the theory of the Dwemer being stuck and lost inside of a specific plane of oblivion?
I've heard that kind of as a general thing, and I always found it to be too vague. And part of that is because, so let's take Yagrum Bagarn, for example. He talks about
in the realm of plot device.
Yeah, that's where he was, and he said, "Oh, I was in the Outer Realms," and the developers even admitted, "Yeah, we kind of painted ourselves into a corner there. We don't actually know where he was." I like to think he was in a different dream. But I did notice the other day when doing when I started Molag Bal's quest, that he mentions that he wants you to send Mentana flying back to the Outer Realms so that he can suffer punishment for eternity. So it implies that it's Oblivion, and so I can see why people would say, yeah, why people would say that the Dwemer ended up in Oblivion. Like if Yagrum Bagarn could have been in Oblivion, and the effect of the calling and Numidium somehow didn't reach that far, then that would explain why the Dwemer are out there, kind of.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
I have a really dumb yet simultaneously awesome idea.
Yeah.
Homes are just the Dwemer or Daedra words for the far shores.
Well, okay, repeat that?
Outer Realms.
Oh, okay.
You know, Daedric and Dwarven term for the far shores.
Ooh. So Yagrum
that would explain how he was not affected by it, because the far shores are a place of waiting until the time of the next world skin.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that'd be tough for someone like Yagrum to go to the far shores and then come back. Why would you return? You know what I mean?
Because it's a place of waiting.
I mean, if you're in the Undying Lands, you know, on Arda, and you're not one of the races of men, and you go to the Undying Lands, like you didn't come back. Like, I could die there.
Dude, that's Tolkien. We talked about Elder Scrolls, right?
I know, but I'm using that to make a point.
I suppose that could depend on his motivation for going there, which we don't know, obviously.
Which is part of why I think that it's actually a dream that he went to. So he went to Akavir or Yokuda, or he went to somewhere that maybe we don't even know about. He maybe jumped a couple dreams and then came back with some crazy metaphysical knowledge. And that's, I mean, we already know he's a super nerd. You know, like you can hear that in his if you go into the Marwyn files and listen to his audio, he's got custom audio that he never uses. It was never actually used.
Oh, actually, what if in that case he goes to the very edges of Atmora, where obviously time, like maybe he's just experimenting with time, or he's actually trying to get away from Kagrenac and knows, who fucking knows. But because time is frozen, whatever fucked up the Dwemer didn't affect, because it just doesn't happen. There's no event.
Yeah.
Then you've got the question, of course, of how did he get out, but how did Ysgramor? How did all of the dudes who came before Ysgramor get out?
Yeah, no, I mean,
can't get out.
That's valid, I think.
Which is again why I'm saying I think it might actually be the far shores, because even in ESO there's a mission for something somewhere where you go and you visit the far shores, but you obviously come back.
Yeah. I think maybe it's my fault. We started talking about Yagran Bagarn instead of where the Dwemer went after the activation of Numidium. And Lexicon, I don't know how familiar you are with basically the consensus the community has on what happened to the Dwemer. This is something that we've got in the frequently asked questions of Tesla. But basically the idea is that the Dwemer, using the calling, which is a lot of people don't know about the calling. It was essentially a telepathic Wi-Fi network where all the Dwemer could effectively communicate over long distances via telepathy. And so when Cathnoquey used Numidium, through the calling, they were all combined, all their souls stacked into one unit, and that unit became the skin of Numidium. Now, what do we know about skin in the Elder Scrolls? We know that ideology.
Skin is ideology.
Yep, ideology is skin. And so the Dwemer, who not only wanted to, it wasn't like the Altmer who just want to get the fuck out of Mundus. They want to get the fuck out of the dream. They don't want to be a part of this fake reality. They just want to go and not exist in peace. That's what they want. So, we get to Numidium. Now this is his ideology. He is here to delete. That's what he does. He's here to send you to where you don't exist. And so this is what I think makes Numidium a terribly tragic figure. Because you've got all of these Dwemer souls now combined into one entity. And they're screaming. They cannot escape now. They are trapped. And they are doomed to watch as everything else gets deleted and not them. That is the fate they want. They can only afflict it upon others, and they can't afflict it upon themselves. And so they cry no in protest.
That's terrifying.
Right? God is armored head to toe in terror. According to sermons, the 36 lessons of
why
the
you must come to him unarmed.
Uh-huh. Yep, that's sermon 11. When you approach God, you must cut both of them off. God has no need of theory. I'm not quoting it
He
perfectly.
Is cloaked head to toe in terror.
Yeah. So...
Also... Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Also going back to the calling,
Mm-hmm.
there's an interesting point there in that, I believe this was posted on Tesla probably over a year ago. Like, probably actually early when ESO came out, or when this cosmetic came out, but there's a set of Dwarven Mitre cosmetics in it, and they're all supposed to be designed to facilitate the calling better.
Yeah.
But one in particular is supposed to be one that serves as a essentially pylon of the calling, and it bears considerable likeness to the mask of the Shaman, who of course is everything.
Yeah, I'm looking at the image right now. It does have. Yeah.
It's not exact.
No, it's not.
Art style is massively different
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I mean you can see the similarities. I mean you've got the kind of the arching crown deal. I mean if you split that up into 3 parts, hey, you've got that top part of Dagothar's mask. You've got the little diamond shape in the center that looks like a third eye. The only thing that's different is like the mouth area, because that Dagothar's mask is like a simulacrum of an actual face. And so, you've got lips and everything, just like, an Ordinator mask would have. No, I think you're on the side. Go ahead.
Even then, that could just be likened up to him just fucking customizing, to getting whoever made it to customize it.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder where he got his mask.
Yeah.
I mean, did he make it himself? is this part of his projection from the dream sleeve, if we accept that theory, that Daedric is actually dead but awake, and so he's projecting himself as a dead person from the dream sleeve, and so the real world is his dream, and he's dreaming himself into it, and that's why when you kill him, he just kind of disappears.
I'm gonna quickly post the Master Mitre into the chat.
Yeah, please do.
So that can be seen.
As I was just looking at the mask in ESO. Is that the same one?
That's the one I was talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
Mitres.
Yeah. Post what you got in the chat here.
What the fuck is that mask?
Yeah, I'll I've actually got this mask in ESO. That one there. I used it for a little while. My character went on like a Dwemer research kick, and so he wore that.
Try to listen in for any surviving Dwemer on calling.
Something like that, yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the general consensus of what happened to the Dwemer, and it's based on an article written by Luegar, I believe, who's still active in Tesslor. It's a final report to Trebonius, because I don't think there's actually a way to finish the quest in Morrowind, because Trebonius asks you to figure out why the Dwemer disappeared, where they went. I don't think you can actually finish that. I've never been able to figure out how to finish it. You find the books or whatever. You talk to Yagran Bagarn. He doesn't fucking know. But this piece, final report to Trebonius. Let me see if I can. Final report to Trebonius. I love how it autofills. It knows what I'm talking about. And so this here, it kind of puts some things together. And most of it's what I've kind of said already. That the Dwemer became the skin of Numidium. And so their combined souls are basically that they're a divine skin. So it's not just that they're the skin, they're the divine skin. You know, the skin of an entire people. Effectively subgradiated upwards to become closer to divine. But I mean, yeah. Back to your question, Lexicon. Yeah, I have heard of you know, people saying, oh yeah, they're out in Oblivion somewhere and they're lost, and I don't necessarily believe that, but that doesn't mean, you know, you can't, or other people can't. Other people think they just got disintegrated. A lot of those will reference the piles of ash that exist in was it Basam Ankshend beneath Mournhold. If you explore that, you can find like suits of armor laying on the ground, and then there's a pile of ash, kind of right there. But yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else you guys wanted to talk about. We're just over an hour and a half. Any last words?
My ancestors are smiling upon Imperials.
Okay, well, I guess if we have nothing else, I'm gonna wrap it up. The Telmore Independent Press is back in production. We will have the first issue of Volume 2 available at the end of this week. So probably the 30th or 31st. So that's this coming Saturday or Friday. It's gonna be a good issue. A lot of stuff. We're probably gonna have some graphics overhauls. It's gonna turn out real nice. Some of that will extend into the website. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that. And then we will have another casual lore chat here in about 2 weeks, as we do it bi-weekly. And I think that's it. So I think I'll kill the stream now. So everybody wave.
Kill what you love.
That's a joke because they can only see me. Bye, internet.